Yeah, you know what time it is. Okay, Neil Ratnar Rockdock here with a story. So, this week of September 29th, 1973, Grand Funk Railroad had the #1 song in the United States with We're an American Band. And today also happens to be the 71st birthday of founding member Mark Farner. So I thought I would tell you a few things about the band and Farner you might not know. But as usual, a little background first. Alright, so guitarist and vocalist Mark Farner began his career in music by playing in the band Terry Knight and the Pack with both Terry Knight and drummer Don Brewer. But Knight eventually left to pursue what turned out to be an unsuccessful solo career as a solo musician, and instead he switched to management. Now in the meantime, Farner and Brewer added bass player Mel Shacker from Question Mark and the Mysterians, and with Knight as manager, they became the power trio Grand Funk Railroad, or just Grand Funk, who in many ways copied the Cream. That was their model, the Cream. Power trio, whatever. Okay. Knight also named the band, making it a play on words for the Grand Trunk Western Railroad, a well-known rail line in Michigan, which is where they were all from. I think Flint, Michigan, actually. All right, so the band first achieved success at the Atlanta Pop Festival in 1969, and later that year, they released their first album, Closer to Home. Well, not later that year. Actually, 1970, they released their first album, Closer to Home. Now, Knight was a trip, man. He was very well known for his marketing savvy, and he launched an intense advertising campaign, which included spending $100,000. This is back in 1970, so you can imagine what that would be equivalent to today, a lot of money, on a New York City Times Square billboard to advertise the album. And if you were around New York City that time, you had to see it. Huge, man. Pictures of Farner, Brewer, and Shacker, and it was probably the first time that any group had taken out that big a billboard on Times Square for anything. So it actually worked, because by 71, Grand Funk equaled the Beatles' Shea Stadium attendance record, but actually sold out the venue in just 72 hours, whereas the Beatles concert took a few weeks to sell out. So they were like a mega band, man. Huge in the 70s. Okay. So, as often happens when bands become huge, they began to question Knight about his managerial style and his financial management, more specifically, all leading to firing Terry in 1972. Knight, not too happy about that, sued the band, and it all came to a head when Knight famously repossessed all of the band's equipment before a gig at Madison Square Garden. Now, the trio ultimately won their legal battle with Terry, but at a very heavy cost. Okay, but they continued on after Knight, and they added, actually, a guy named Craig Frost on keyboards, changed their sound a bit, but they liked it, they expanded it. But the funny story is, he was not their first choice. Peter Frampton, my old friend Peter Frampton, had just left Humble Pie, and they really wanted to add Peter to the band, but Peter had already signed a solo deal with A&M Records, and so he was unavailable. They chose Craig Frost instead, and you might remember the name. He went on later after Grand Funk to be with Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. Okay, so they came out with this so-so album called Phoenix, and then they brought in Todd Rundgren as producer, and things changed and got much better for them. What followed was the band's two most successful albums, and two #1 hits resulted from those albums. The Don Brewer penned the Locomotion from the album Shine On, and that was actually written by Carole King and Jerry Goffin, and originally recorded by Little Eva, who happened to be their maid. King and Goffin wrote the song. They needed somebody to do it. Their maid was a singer, a budding singer, and her name was Eva, and they made her a star, and she did the song. But Grand Funk redid the song. I'm sure you heard it. And the other song that became a huge hit was the one I talked about that was number one today on September 29th in 1973. We're an American Band from the album of the same name. That was their first number one hit, and coincidentally, it became a number one on Mark Farner's 25th birthday. And again, happy 71st birthday to founding member Mark Farner. All right, the band had continued success into the mid-70s, started to trail off, but they attracted the attention of none other than Frank Zappa, who wanted to produce one of their albums, and did. So he produced the album Good Singin', Good Playin', which did nothing, and the group finally disbanded in 1976. Farner began a solo career after Grand Funk broke up, and he and Don Brewer launched a new Grand Funk lineup, and then in 96, Grand Funk Railroad's three original members once again reunited and played to 250,000 people in 14 shows during a 3-month period. In 97, the band played 3 sold-out Bosnian benefit concerts, which featured a full symphony orchestra that was conducted by Paul Schaefer from David Letterman, and then released a live 2-disc benefit CD called Bosnia, recorded in Auburn Hills, Michigan. And you'll never guess who joined them on stage for that concert and recording. Peter Frampton. So after all these years, they got their wish, and Peter played with them live for that concert, which must have been great. In 98, Farner left the band, returned to a solo career, and Mark's biggest success as a solo artist came actually in the Christian music market, where one of his tunes, Isn't It Amazing, reached number 2 on the contemporary Christian music charts. All right, so that's my story for today. One quick personal story about Grand Funk. I was with ELP as tour manager during that time, the early 70s, when they were huge. And I don't remember if we played on the bill with them, or they just showed up to see ELP, or it was a festival or something. But Don Brewer was a big fan of Keith Emerson. And he made me set up a chair directly behind, did I say Keith Emerson? I meant Carl Palmer. He was a drummer, and he was an incredible fan of Carl Palmer, and he made me set up a chair during the set right on the stage. You couldn't see him, right behind Carl, so that he could see everything that Carl did. It was kind of interesting and kind of cool. All right, that's my story for today. I hope you enjoyed it. Beautiful day out here, beautiful fall weather we're having up here in Woodstock. I want to remind you, 3 o'clock today, 3 o'clock on Saturdays and Sundays, This Day in Rock on Radio Woodstock, also on iHeartRadio. Today I got a great story about a John Lennon song, but I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to tune in. All right, and Rock Doc Podcast, Music is Medicine. The first one is now available on the Woodstock Podcast Network. That's all one word, woodstockpodcastnetwork.com. And I will post a link in my comment to this vid so that you can check it out. It's part 1 of my interview with Mario the Big M Medious in my first medical segment on Jaggers heart surgery. I think you're going to enjoy it. My second podcast will go up this Wednesday, which is part 2 of the Mario interview. Another great medical story, another great This Week in Rock stories, and then every 2 weeks after that. So please join me. This week it will be available on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Google Play, and anywhere good podcasts are streamed. All right, that's it for today. Again, get out there and enjoy this weather if you're in a place where the weather is great. And Join me on my podcast, join me on Radio Woodstock, and read my posts on Facebook, and join me for another video next week. All right, that's it for today. Oh, what was that? Let's try that again. All right now. See you soon. Bye.